This episode is made possible by Tranquilla Tea Candles, the world's first and probably only candles you can drink. In a recent interview with Candle and Tea Relations magazine, creator and CEO Tranquilla Miller is quoted to have said, "It all started one day when I spilled some chamomile tea into one of my favorite candles after sneezing. I was heartbroken. But then, the thought occurred to me, maybe I should drink this." What's funny is I just read an amazing quote by a social media influencer not 2 seconds prior, and can you guess what the quote was? It was this: "If you're ever in doubt of whether or not you should drink something or whatever, drink it. Always. No matter what. Live, love, laugh." It's no wonder that particular influencer has over 500 billion followers. Didn't even know that was possible. So what did I do? I grabbed the candle and stirred the new concoction until it was a perfect steamy blend of melted pumpkin cider wax and tea. I drank it, and here I am now. I actually have some Tranquilla tea with me here in the studio. This is me, Nathan, now, by the way. The packaging is nice. Let me grab it. This particular flavor is Christmas tree and Darjeeling, now with 2% less wick. Cool. All right, let's give it a go. Wish me luck. Wow. You know what? I was skeptical at first, but after drinking this in person, I gotta admit that it's absolutely disgusting. And I lost the receipt. And, oh my God, I also just realized how much this is gonna hurt in the bathroom later. Once the wax hardens. Welcome to Several Stories High, an eclectic, electric anthology of fiction, fact, and everything in between. I'm your host, Nathaniel David Knox. Shall we begin? Ray-Ray Schnockel has been a stay-at-home dad for 60 years, and seeing as how he and his wife Ethel decided not to have kids, he's had a fair amount of time on his hands. With Ethel's hourly salary as a temp sub, that's a substitute teacher who fills in for other substitute teachers who are unable to fill in for the regular teachers, the Schnockels have enjoyed a comfortable life over the years, basking in the pleasure of each other's company, watching the sun come up from the front porch in the mornings and sipping coffee and tea, in separate cups, of course, and dreaming of the day ahead, and then watching that same sun set from the backyard hours later around the fire pit, sipping wine, fondly speaking of each other's days, of all the insufferable blokes who Ethel had to endure at the school she was temp subbing at, or the odd and even downright eccentric neighborhood activity Ray-Ray would notice in between all his housekeeping chores. Yes, they'd talk until nightfall, until the stars would shine brighter than the fire that kept them warm. And in case you're wondering what they do on hot nights, it was pretty much the exact same thing, except they'd sit a few feet further back from the fire than normal. Yes, the Schnockels have laughed, cried, fumed, and farted, at times annoying the ever-loving hell out of each other, only to make up when one person caves and comes to their senses and remembers what a gift marriage can be, and reminding the other of this fact. I suppose love really is the best word for it. All this to say, Ray-Ray Schnockel has wanted for practically nothing over the years. Practically. Except for one thing. Pizza. A food so delicious, so universally celebrated, and yet so elusive for one Ray-Ray Raymond Ray Rayford Schnockel Jr. The nightmare first began years back, when Ray-Ray first realized that the Schnockels' home, the one he kept and cleaned and maintained with all of his heart, was perfectly situated in what is now known as a pizza delivery dead zone, aka the 100 by 100 foot plot of land deemed undeliverable by every pizza delivery service in fictional city Maryland, the Schnockels' hometown. Every single one. Just think of the horror for a minute, won't you? Because it's important to remember the blessings you have in your life. Some people aren't so lucky. People like the Schnockels, an innocent couple stricken by the lightning bolt of cold, arbitrary pizza delivery jurisdiction cartography. Life can be such a cruel, careless thing sometimes. But there was one time, however, when Ray-Ray nearly fulfilled his lifelong pizza dream. It was when Ethel came across an ad in the local paper, posted by an anonymous pizza guy who said he made house calls. Ethel was the one to call the number because Ray-Ray was far too excited to hold the phone, much less speak into it. And can you imagine the pure joy when that same pizza guy, who introduced himself only as Coco, answered the phone and said he'd be right over? But not before clarifying he would charge $200 to perform. Bewildered, Ethel agreed. She never heard of any pizza delivery service that charges such outrageous prices or uses the word perform in such a low tone of voice, but for Ray-Ray's happiness, $200 was mere chump change. She'd even pay $210 if that's what it took. But the Schnockels would never receive this delivery. For mere minutes after Ethel hung up the phone, the two of them will be whisked away on a whirlwind adventure involving a neighbor who got kidnapped by some giant spiders. But you'll have to go back and listen to episodes 1 and 5 in that order of this podcast to hear that whole story. The point is, it was for the best that the Schnockels didn't receive this particular pizza delivery, because this particular pizza guy was, in fact, a stripper. Close call for the Schnockels. Can you imagine such a horror? A sweet-ish old couple unknowingly letting a stripper into their home? Those two would have had a fit the second the truth was, revealed. Chicken, bacon, those whitening things for your teeth, and God knows what else he'd be trying to sell as one of those notorious door-to-door sellers of all things in strip form you often hear about, aka a stripper. Close call for the Schnockels indeed. And yet again, Ray-Ray Schnockel saw the promise of pizza vanish before his very eyes, like a quarter in a magic show that also vanishes before your very eyes. You know, if the magician is good and not some guy you met while washing your hands in a public bathroom or something. I'd now like to share with you an entry from Ray-Ray's diary. He faxed me a picture of it for this episode. It's actually more of a painting, or a faxed painting, I don't know. But it's still legible, and I think it provides a fascinating glimpse into not only Ray-Ray's deepest desires from childhood, but also a broader, profound insight into the very nature of desire as it pertains to us all. Listen to how, even as a youngster, Ray-Ray was able to tap into the deepest, most complex parts of the human condition through metaphor and, at times, even robust symbolism. This particular entry is dated 1949-ish, around either noon or midnight, or both. That's literally what it says right here. Now remember, Ray-Ray is just 7 years old at this point, and yet it seems like he was already in touch with the most intimate yearnings of his soul. The entry reads, "Dear Diary, I really want pizza. Like, more than freaking anything." Amazing. Well said, Ray-Ray. Well said. They say that hope deferred makes the heart sick. And ever since that fateful day around 1949-ish, Ray-Ray's heart has been sick. Sad and sick for pizza. Now, this is not to say that Ethel hasn't done everything in her power to try and make her husband's one unfulfilled dream come true. On the contrary, it's because of her that he only had one unquenched desire and not 7 or 8 like the other husbands down the block. She'd given him the greatest gifts a guy could ever hope for. Love, friendship, intimacy, a roof over his head, a listening ear, a forgiving heart, true laughs for his jokes, a shoulder for his tears, and even first dibs on the music selection in the car every third Saturday of the month. Few wives in all of human history have given more than Ethel Schnockel. She'd been everything for him, but no matter how much she tried, she could never be pizza. She just couldn't. Sure, she had a blast all those years temp subbing. It was the perfect job, yelling at annoying kids, teaching the good ones all the real adult stuff they need to know and not the crap they were forced to read in books, and then leaving them all in the dust the next day or two when she'd be assigned to another class, having taught the next generation just enough without being annoyed to death of them, and on to the next, and so on. But once Ethel retired, she couldn't shake the desire to help Ray-Ray with his dream. To help him feel even half the fulfillment she had been able to experience yelling at kids and helping others. And if pizza could do that, then pizza it was. She tried everything. Pizza-scented candles, quesadillas with marinara sauce, flatbread with cheese and sausage on top, but nothing worked. She tried playing Benny DeCaesar's famous 1940s hit record, "Gimme a Pizza Your Heart," every night as they went to sleep, but to no avail. She even tried to take Ray-Ray to one of the only dine-in pizza joints in town back in the late 90s, when single pizza joints in town were all the rage. But just as they were about to leave the house, it started to drizzle, and Ray-Ray refused to leave, saying, "The rain'll destroy my perm! I won't have it ruined again, not after all I worked for!" Ethel actually faxed me a Polaroid of Ray-Ray when he had this perm, and I've got to say, as much as I think we all want to hear about how the sweet old fella finally got a slice of cheesy goodness, it was the right decision for him to stay inside that day, to save the perm. That thing was glorious. But I'm told he had to give it up after he was pulled over and found to have been driving without a license for the perm. But thanks to a lenient judge, who just happened to be Ray-Ray's biological mother at the time, he got off with just 40 years probation, so long as he got rid of the perm. And you might be thinking at this point, it's not so bad, Ray-Ray. Without a perm to worry about, you can finally go to that dine-in pizza joint in town. But sadly, the place closed down. People just weren't buying traditional pizza like they used to. Not in fictional city Maryland, at least. The world had moved on to flashier faux pizza creations by then, and pizza bagels and pizza pockets and pizza carrots were all the rage. And Ray-Ray lost his chance. And Ethel lost her chance to bestow happiness on her husband. Just what's a Schnockel to do? I'm sure I'll be receiving a very angry phone call from Ethel after this episode airs for revealing this next part, but things even got so dark in her quest to make Ray-Ray's pizza dream come true that a few months back, she even, how do I put this delicately, stooped as low as walking the streets until she found the right place to buy a whole kilo of pizza-flavored rice cakes. She scored them from some dealers behind a car wash that only services remote-controlled toy cars. And she missed 2 whole days of work walking every street, side street, and broken boulevard in fictional city, that crime-infested hellhole, until she found some. But Ethel only made it 3 blocks down the street before realizing the moral blunder she just committed. For it is never, under any circumstances, the right decision to buy even just 1 rice cake, let alone a whole kilo. Now, I don't usually assert opinions with such harsh political undertones, but this is something I feel strongly, and we all have to draw the line somewhere, right? Rice cakes are aggressively bland, almost disrespectfully so, and no amount of pizza flavor or delusion will ever change that. I know it, and so did Ethel. Snapping out of her near debauchery, she soon found herself flushing the rice cakes down the toilet at a porta potty inside a waffle place. It took several hours to flush all the rice cakes because, in case you were unaware, it takes far more rice cakes to make up a kilogram than, say, another substance that I won't mention on this podcast.
You mean cocaine?
Yes, Francis. Cocaine. Thank you for that. So, as Ethel flushed the rice cakes, she found it difficult to shake the feeling of helplessness with the whole situation.
Oh, Ray-Ray,
Ethel said, flushing and gagging from the smell, the putrid stench of rice cakes. The porta potty was actually somewhat pleasant by comparison.
I just wish I could make this dream come true for you, darling.
She thought of how they first met in the service during Vietnam. Room service, to be specific, at the Butts Hotel, an upscale establishment on the north side of fictional city. Ray-Ray was a tall, broad-shouldered, draft-dodging owner of the greatest perm you'd ever seen, puffs peeking out from beneath his bellhop's hat in reddish-brown clouds of greatness. Ethel was a curly bob-haired, cardigan-wearing bundle of charm, working the front desk like she owned the place. Technically, she did, if you count the 1/75th share she received as a benefit for working at the hotel for 9 years by that point. She'd be called pretty several times a day by guests and newspaper horoscopes alike, often being mistaken for Elizabeth Taylor. She was even mistaken for Elvis Presley once. And what a mistake that was. And just as a side note, if these cultural references are unfamiliar to you, don't worry. I've done my research. Turns out, after much Googling, there were in fact people, places, and things that existed before 2015. Several, actually. Freaking weird. But while Ethel always maintained a professional demeanor, asking guests to please mind your own business when complimenting her, or complaining about the excessive smoke from her cigar as she checked them in, she could also be rather frank, or curt, or some other man's name. The way she'd curse guests out for asking what room number they'd be staying in, or how she can make annoying coworkers scatter with a single icy stare from behind her horn-rimmed glasses. Most feared Ethel, but not Ray-Ray. At least not for the same reasons everyone else did. He'd only said hello to her for the whole summer of 1967, the first summer he'd worked there. Even with an amazing perm, it still took Ray-Ray months to muster up the courage to ask Ethel out. He was afraid of her because he was in love with her, finding it impossible to take his eyes off her as she read the latest issue of Obscure Podcast Character Backstory Monthly, a publication deemed science fiction back then in 1967, but culturally relevant today. Yes, Ray-Ray was in love. He liked the fact that Ethel had the uncanny talent to make annoying people disappear. He liked that she only seemed to talk when there was something worth saying. He also liked the fact that she seemed to be the only person who complimented his perm without irony or sarcasm. So, one day, after stealing some tickets for a 2-week cruise from a local conman's fanny pack, Ray-Ray ate enough beef jerky to work up the nerve to finally ask Ethel that age-old question, the one you hear in every Jane Austen tale, every Downton Abbey episode, and every rom-com alike. He said, "Ethel, do you have enough vacation days to take a 2-week-long cruise with me to Iceland 2 Thursdays from now?" After 40 minutes of heated debate as to the proper meaning of this Thursday as opposed to next Thursday, Ethel looked at Ray-Ray in all his permed glory and said,
As long as there's wine, I'm there.
Ethel couldn't tell if the tears in her eyes were due to the heartfelt fondness from her flashback or from the sour, putrid stench of the rice cakes she was still flushing down the porta-potty at that waffle place. Again, and I can't stress this enough, it takes so many rice cakes to make up a kilo. Either way, Ethel decided to chalk her tears up to her love for Ray-Ray. Now if she could just figure out how to make his pizza dream come true. She began to search through her purse, the same purse that seemed to always have everything known to man in it, and she pulled out one of her thinking cigars. Once the thing was lit, she began to think.
Think,
Ethel thought.
Wait a minute. That's it. Make his dream come true. Make.
She flushed the last stack of disgusting rice cakes down the porta-potty.
If we can't get anybody to deliver us pizza, then we'll make our own.
She kicked the porta-potty door open as if she were 16 again, back when she kicked porta-potty doors open, only slightly harder. She felt fresh fire in her lungs, and as she got in her car and sped away, she knew that fire was either the surge of love one gets for their loved one, or the precursors to one of the worst cigar-induced farts this side of heaven. A few hours later, Ethel returned home, both arms flexed with bloated grocery bags, to find Ray-Ray napping under the table like he always did, his gray flat cap over his face.
Ray-Ray!
He yelled, popping up and smashing his head on the table like he always did.
Wake up, darling!
Come on, 5 more minutes, he said, rolling over, blood pouring from his head like it always did. Spent all day installing those slam-free cabinets like you wanted.
You see? That's why I love you,
Ethel said.
I ask you to do something around the house, and you just do it. Sure, I asked you back in the late 70s, but the point is, you're a man of your word. And so am I,
Ethel said proudly.
Well, not the man part, but... Oh, you know what I mean. Ray-Ray, get up. I got a surprise for you.
What is it? Ray-Ray mumbled, yawning like a sleepy banshee like he always did.
See for yourself,
she said. Ethel set her purse down on the counter, then proceeded to unbag all the items she purchased from the fictional city super mega holy crap market. This was the closest store to the Schnockels that even sold pizza ingredients due to the strict pizza laws. The more she tossed and flung those grocery items, the more anticipation grew in Ray-Ray's bloodshot eyes. What was this mysterious puzzle being solved before him?
Last bag,
Ethel said, tossing the final sack of mushrooms on the counter with everything else. Then the two surveyed that kitchen counter. It was brimming with ingredients. Fresh peppers, pepperoni, cheeses, olives, onions, cans of the finest tomato sauce, herbs and spices, all crowded around the darling of the ensemble. A perfectly round pizza crust. A blank canvas of dough crying out to be transformed into a masterpiece. A hot, cheesy, delicious masterpiece.
So, what do you think?
Ethel said, a rare grin across her face. It's amazing, darling, Ray-Ray said. What the hell is it?
Are you serious?
Yeah?
It's a pizza, Ray-Ray?
No offense, but seems a little undercooked.
That's the point, you big lug. We're gonna make it from scratch.
Oh. It seems it finally dawned on him. He nearly began to weep when he put two and two together as to what was going on, and after Ethel had told him exactly what was going on with further explanation and an elaborate drawing on a napkin. You bought all this for me? Just so I could finally taste a slice of pizza? Ethel nodded, and maybe it was his imagination, or maybe it was due to the thick cloud of cigar smoke, but she seemed to appear exactly as she did when Ray-Ray first laid eyes on her, back in the late 60s when they worked at the Butts Hotel. What a woman I married, Ray-Ray said, wiping the tears from his eyes. I'm so glad I took that job at the Butts, or else I would have never met you, you beautiful, caring angel, you. Thank God for Butts. Thank God. They embraced, and soon Ethel said,
Well, what are we waiting for? Pour us some vino, crank up the record player, and let's make us a pizza.
Yes, ma'am. In a magical matter of moments, the oven was preheating, the old dusty vinyl was spinning tunes from yesteryear, and the hearts were thumping through all the angelic wafting cigar smoke that just seemed to fit. Ray-Ray, a hand on one of the kitchen cabinets, said, Hey, darling, check it out. No matter how hard you try to slam these things shut. He opened the cabinet door, revealing a multitude of shimmering wine glasses. The bumpers I installed make it impossible to slam now. With all his might, he tried to slam the cabinet door shut. He tried. See? And succeeded. Oh,
Were those all our wine glasses?
Ethel said. Yep.
Oh.
All the cups we own, matter of fact. The cabinet door hung open, a flat, drunken, wooden vandal. But this was a minor setback for Ethel. She scanned the countertops until she found the bottle of Merlot Vino brand wine. She took off her glasses and grabbed the horny end into the cork and yanked it out like child's play. Ray-Ray smiled. He thought she was beautiful with or without the glasses, but her taking them off brought many a fond memory into his mind. And so, the pizza making began. The sauce was spread, then the cheese was laid out, like seeds for a long overdue harvest. With each new ingredient that the two took turns sprinkling upon the soon-to-be pizza pie, there came more giggles and hiccups. They'd also been taking turns stealing playful gulps of wine straight from the bottle, and as Ethel peppered the pre-pizza with onions, Ray-Ray's eyes grew quite wet. Say, darling, do you remember the first time we drank wine straight from the bottle like this?
Of course,
Said Ethel.
on our cruise to Iceland in '67.
Yeah. Turns out we weren't the only ones drinking on the deck that night, huh?
Yep, that captain really could hold his liquor, huh?
Ethel said. Wish I could have held our wine glasses instead of dropping them overboard.
It wasn't your fault. Captain was standing right next to us, and with nobody steering the thing, our ship was bound to hit a fishing boat or two.
Yeah, guess you're right, Ray-Ray said, entranced in yesteryear. But even if I didn't drop our wine glasses overboard, and even if our boat didn't kill those 18 fishermen, I still would have been a nervous wreck.
Why?
Said Ethel, aware of the answer, tears forming in her own eyes too, on account of the onions. Maybe. 'Cause that's the night I proposed to you. It was just something about the way the moon and stars reflected off your glasses, and the way that drunk captain's cologne smelled. It was all just the perfect moment.
It sure was romantic,
Ethel said, taking off her glasses again and wiping her eyes with her arm. She puffed a huge cloud of cigar smoke. The song changed again.
Hey, isn't this that song that was playing that night? On the boat PA system?
Yes, said Ray-Ray, swaying to the soothing melodies. After that captain passed out and rolled overboard, I got down on one knee, pulled out that ring I stole from the same con man I stole the cruise tickets from, and I asked you to make me the happiest man on earth. I said, Ethel, will you marry me? And you said,
can we revisit this when we get back on land?
Not what I expected to hear, but I understood what you meant.
I only said that because I had to pee the whole trip. I never make a decision before I pee, and I never pee on a boat of any kind. That's just the way I was raised. But at least it worked out in the end.
Ethel winked, which was another out-of-character thing to do, due to the Merlot vino. And as if waking from a dream, when the cigar smoke settled, they saw it. Their creation. A pizza, ripe with gardens of beautiful ingredients. Families of cheeses amidst red and green peppers, onions, sausage, pepperoni, mushrooms, and anticipation. The only thing left was to cook it. And in went the pizza. They both stared at it through the greasy glass, as if it were their only child having an MRI.
So close,
Ethel thought, setting the timer for 20 minutes. So frickin' close, thought Ray-Ray, his mouth watering. 20 minutes seemed like 20 years. The Schnockels drank more wine as they waited, reminiscing, flirting, and then annoying each other, and repeating this process until Ethel opened the oven, wearing a puffy blue mitten. She pulled out the steaming circle of ecstasy, all the while Ray-Ray staring, his heart, as the doctors say, going freaking berserk. His stomach rumbled. He watched his wife of some crazy large amount of years slice up the pizza, creating newer, littler pieces of pizza. The more the merrier, Ray-Ray thought. This was it. A dream over 6 decades in the making. Ethel turned to transfer the sliced pizza to the counter for the plating phase. Ray-Ray leapt out of the way, out of reverence. And it was an absolute shame he didn't see the cabinet door hanging open because... Ouch! Ray-Ray yelled, the corner of the cabinet door nicking him on the head, causing his hat to fall onto the slippery, dirty hardwood floor. Ethel didn't see the hat in time. She slipped on the flat cap, as if it were a cartoon banana peel. She fell back, the slices of pizza flinging about in all directions. The 2 injured Schnockels looked up from the floor in horror. The slices of heavenly pizza were now scattered about the hellish, dirty floor, face down as if executed at point-blank range. No, no, Ray-Ray yelped, progressively holding each slice like fallen comrades. No, he cried, counting. He grabbed a calculator. After lightning-fast arithmetic, he realized a pizza typically has 8 slices. Come on, come on, come on, he mumbled, counting each inedible cadaver. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait, could one have survived? Oh, one was all he needed. Just one lone piece would be enough. One single slice of saucy goodness from the god before I die, thought Ray-Ray. But where was it? Then Ethel sniffed loudly. Was that... Fire! She yelled. It seems that her cigar caused the drapes to catch a flame when the thing flew from her mouth during the fall. The fire became an inferno in seconds. Soon the kitchen was nothing but clouds of smoke and raging flames.
Ethel, where are you? Ethel! Grab my hand!
The two searched through the smoke like a pair of Frankenstein's creations. When their hands finally clasped, there was nothing left to do but run. Out the front door they burst, the music melting away with the rest of the kitchen. The two collapsed onto the yard, stunned and silent. Perhaps it was the shock of it all, but Ethel seemed sadder that she came so close to giving Ray-Ray a delicious piece of pizza than the fact that their home was now on fire. She looked at Ray-Ray, who was staring back at her. Perhaps it was the heat, but his perm, it was back. He looked just like he did when they first met back at the Butts, except way older. It broke Ethel's heart the way Ray-Ray gazed at the burning house and back at her, then back at the house in a sad pendulum of heartache. He cried, and so did Ethel. She reached into her purse. It was the only thing she was able to salvage in the rush to escape the blaze. She searched it, looking for one of her crying cigars. But if she were honest, even a pouting or moping cigar would do. But then, she felt something. It was warm and slick, triangular in shape. As Ray-Ray continued to weep, she carefully pulled the mysterious item from her purse. It was the 8th piece, and it was still warm and intact, toppings and all. Without hesitation, she placed a gentle hand on Ray-Ray's shoulder.
Ray-Ray, look! Look!
He did, a stunned expression on his teary face.
It must have landed in my purse when I fell.
Ray-Ray still didn't speak as the flames got louder and the sound of a siren howled in the distance.
Oh, Ray-Ray, don't cry. I'm sorry. I wanted you to be able to enjoy the whole thing. I really did. It's all I've ever thought about for years, to see you enjoy one delicious pizza. But here, take it. At least it's something.
No, Ray-Ray said.
What? Why?
You think I'm crying because of a stupid slice of pizza? Said Ray-Ray.
Aren't you?
No, woman.
Then why?
Ethel said. Because back inside, in all the smoke and fire, for the first time in my life, I thought I might actually lose you.
Oh, Ray-Ray.
The two hugged and cried some more.
Here, this piece is still warm. There's still a little bit of your dream left. Go on, Ray-Ray.
Ray-Ray shook his head. No, not unless you take the first bite. Ethel made a, "Are you sure?" sort of face, and after Ray-Ray nodded confidently, she took a yummy bite. Then Ray-Ray took the remaining half. He sighed a deep sigh, and after coughing a lot from the growing clouds of smoke, he ate the pizza. And he'd never tasted anything so delicious in all of his life. The flavors made his cheeks sizzle with euphoria. And soon, Ethel rested her head on his broad shoulder. The two stared at their burning home, as if they were back on the cruise ship, basking out at the beautiful Icelandic sunset again. Boy, Ray-Ray said, savoring the last bite, you really do have everything in that purse. The sirens grew louder and soon arrived at the burning Schnockel residence. But much to the couple's surprise, it wasn't a fire truck that pulled up to the curb, but a police car. Puzzled, the two turned their heads to face the slender fedora-wearing man who got out of the passenger side. Are you Ethel Schnockel? The less than happy-looking detective said, paying the Inferno no mind whatsoever as he straightened his tweed blazer.
Yes?
Ethel said, confused. Detective Milton Pickle, Fictional City Police Department. What's this all about, Detective? Ray-Ray said, puffing his perm like he always did, when he had one. Sir, are you aware that your wife here purchased an entire kilo of illegal pizza-flavored rice cakes earlier today? Ray-Ray looked at Ethel, stunned. Bought it off an undercover agent of ours. We would have arrested her right then and there, but somebody spilled a Slurpee on the 1099 and traffic was a nightmare, so I lost her. Until now. So? The detective spit, the wind carrying it until it hit the uniformed officer behind the wheel of the waiting car. "Anything you want to say to your husband here before we haul your butt off to jail, Ethel?" Ethel clutched her purse and breathed heavily. She looked at Ray-Ray, her burning house, the police car, and the detective. Her mind was racing.
"Yes,"
she said finally.
I would like to say something, Detective, if you'll allow me."
"And what's that?" Detective Pickles said, twirling handcuffs around his index finger arrogantly.
"Ray-Ray,"
said Ethel.
"I just want to say,"
she sniffled.
"Run!"
In seconds, the old married couple sprinted away towards their car, farting uncontrollably. Ethel grabbed the keys from her purse, started the car, and gunned it out the driveway. The old car plowed into Detective Pickle. Bumper first, sending him flying into a poison ivy bush. Ethel yanked the shifter into drive and smashed down the gas, careening into her own mailbox in the mad dash. The Schnockels held hands as they sped away from their burning home and easily a dozen felonies. Ethel tapped on her cheek as she drove, and Ray-Ray gave her a warm, playful kiss on it. Their love was theirs, and so was the open road now. They came up with a plan about an hour into the escape, after they finally ran out of downloaded songs from Spotify to play. Sometimes a lifelong dream can turn into a nightmare at the drop of a hat. And sometimes it can turn into something else, something better than anything you could ever dream up. Ethel and Ray-Ray Schnockel would never return to that house, or even that state. But they would, however, spend the remainder of their years visiting all 49 others, stopping at the highest rated pizza place in each one, and loving every second of it.